Kia ora, and welcome to Constellations and All That. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to Constellations and All That. Today, I have the pleasure of having a conversation, a chat, a catch-up with Bill Mannle, who is coming in from Connecticut today. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for welcoming me. It's
And
happy to be here.
Connecticut is where you live. It's your home base.
Yeah, Connecticut. It's in the northeastern part of the United States for all those who are doing their geography. Yeah, I sit between, my home is literally lies between New York City and Boston,
Okay,
if they can pinpoint that on the map.
beautiful. So this is a really casual conversation. So I'm going to invite you to share with the listeners and the viewers a little bit about yourself, your family,
Okay.
whatever is sitting there for you, about your education or whatever's there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I'll start with who I am. So I'm a husband and I have six children. I was married as a younger man right out of university. I have four children with my first wife. And then I met my second wife, who I'm living with now. We've been together for over 32 years. We met in graduate school. And I'll tell you more about that. So, graduate school is where I discovered constellations. So I went to graduate school for marriage and family therapy and Gestalt therapy.
Mm-hmm.
After my divorce, I thought it would be a good thing to do. Actually, my therapist at the time said, "Oh, you'd be good at this." So I said, "Okay, sure, why not?" So I went back to school and met Maggie, and Maggie and I have twins, a boy and a girl. So together I have six children, and they all are very close, even with years separating them. They're all very close, all living their own lives. The twins are just stepping into first-time jobs and careers after university. So let me go back though. So when I was in graduate school, I met Barbara and Ed Lynch. They were a couple who ran the marriage and family therapy program. And Ed was our Gestalt teacher. He found constellations in 1996 at some Gestalt conference in Canada. Wasn't sure what to make of it until he had his own constellation, and then sort of pursued it. And he was one of the first Americans to train with Bert Hellinger. And I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
it was Harold Honan. Bert had a training in New York City, 1998, 1999. And a lot of the first generation, what I'd call them first generation American teachers, were in that training. Susie Tucker, Dan Booth Cohen, Ed Lynch, and many others. And he started offering workshops. And, a bunch of us who were his students said, yeah, let's go check this out. And that was in the early 2000s. And I never looked back. So it's a little bit about who I am. And I think people who really know me well knew my wife would say I have a pretty long CV, a resume. As a young man, I wanted to be an actor. So I studied that in theater and art and music in university. And then I moved to New York City, to expand my acting career. And it ended up working in a restaurant and figured, well, this pays the bills. So I stayed with that, befriended so many wonderful chefs, and I became a chef.
Wow.
Yeah. And gave up the acting because I started to have children. So I needed to pay the bills. But I managed to work with a lot of great people. And one of the owners of the restaurant opened a restaurant in London, and I went with him. And I went to the Cordon Bleu cooking school when I was in London. So I still love to cook. It's just, I think in those early days, whatever you get into your bones never leaves you as long as it's something you can embrace. So I still love to cook. I think I wrote that on your information sheet
Mm.
about cooking.
A man of many talents.
Yeah, it's just something that I just it's something it's very meditative for me. It's actually very a lot of fun. What am I going to make? How am I going to prepare a meal? I think there's a lot of focus on that for me, but everything goes to the background. I take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and I have dinner. Yeah, and so that's never left. And then I've been doing this, been in plus 30 years as a therapist, psychotherapist, and plus 21 years as a facilitator, trainer, and facilitator.
Fabulous. And you mentioned Gestalt. There's quite a few therapists or constellation facilitators that I know of that have come through Gestalt as well. It seems to be quite an active gateway for people to meet constellations, I think.
I was just taking it because it was part of the course, part of the master's degree I was getting, and then so I think it was, coincidence per se. But Gestalt has really helped me as a facilitator. People say how because Gestalt is really, or no, for me, is a very organic therapy. You're really working one on one with a person. But in terms of what we do in constellations with the interview, Gestalt questions are what are you aware of? What are you feeling? What are you doing right now? What's happening? So it's always bringing the person back to what's going on with them right in the moment. And it's also has taught me how to pay attention to what the body's doing. I notice as you're talking about your dad, you're gritting your teeth. So what's happening there? And then then we can and then it can expand into possibly a constellation. So I'm kind of grounded in that place of just, and it's relational too. So you're always focusing on what the client is offering, and you create this relationship, even in a small amount of time. This relationship is forming. So yeah, I'm grateful to that. But you're right. A lot of people, I'm surprised, have come through Gestalt too. So
Yeah, yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I think it's infused in the work. For me,
mhm.
the trainings that I've experienced, I think that the Gestalt comes through and kind of infused in it,
Well, I
which is
think
lovely.
Yeah, I think though, when I teach my students, when I've had my training, I said, look, you all come from different backgrounds. I think it's important to embrace those because for the longest time, I didn't embrace my theater training. That has really helped me as a facilitator too. I said, however you come to the work, don't ignore what got you here. You're going to paint. You paint with a different brush than I do. And actually, when I started this last training, I bought all these different paintbrushes and put them in a vase in the middle of the room. Go pick the brush that you like. There's fat brushes, skinny brushes, long brushes. And I said, this is how you're going to paint. It's significant what brush you picked up. You're going to paint a different canvas. The invitation is to always step into, your style, how you do the work. Yes, you're going to take a little bit from her, this person, a little bit from that, a little bit. And that. Just like if you're a musician, you're going to have influences, right? Or
Mm,
if you're a painter, you're going to have influences. You're an actor, you're going to have influences, and then you become your own person and your own, facilitator or trainer. So, yeah.
absolutely. Fantastic. If you were talking to someone who knew nothing about constellation, you're at a dinner party or something like that, and someone's asked you, what do you do, Bill? How
Yeah.
would you describe what you
Well,
do?
I was just happened. It just happened. We just had our Thanksgiving last week. And, someone, we're all going around. We're at my sister's home, and we all go around the table and say what we're thankful for. And I did a little constellation kind of thing, mentioning the ancestors, because I'm thankful for my husband. I'm thankful for my, job. I think, but I said, well, I'm going to get into something else. So I went way back, and somebody said to me, he said, can I talk to you more about what you do? So we had it over coffee. And I explained to him, I said, well, my elevator speech, I say Constellations is a multi-generational trauma therapy. He said, what does that mean? Well, we look at the events that have happened in your family system that could still be influencing you now. Most of them are unconscious. Obviously, you're aware of your relationship with your mother and how that's drove you nuts, or your mother was this, or your mother drank. But then, the question is, what happened to your mother? I mean, as we expand into your family, I'd be curious to know because your mother wasn't just born like that. So what happened? And how is that event or series of events, like if she lost her mother when she was 5? how do you think that event is affecting you? And maybe you're holding something or trying to hold something up for your mother that you're not even aware of. Usually when I speak in that, even if it's literally on an elevator, people go, "Oh my God, I'll get that. Oh my God, you're right. Oh, I get, woo, I didn't realize." And I say, yeah, that's it. And so the idea is can you put that down? Can you let that be? Can you leave that burden that you've been carrying or trying to carry that it's really not yours? Can you let it be? And uh, people start, thinking, really? I said, yeah, because that's what we all do. We all, as little ones, we try to hold things up from our parents and we can't. We can't. So it's kind of the elevator speech. I say multi-generational, boom, boom, boom.
That's great.
Yeah, but what I really get into is I use I probably should change it. Well, if your father was in the war, but I usually say what would happen, or what do you think is the relationship to you and your mom because she lost her mom at 5? How do you think that event affected the system? And people get that. They go, "Oh," or other events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can feel that, like, as you were saying that, and even myself as a facilitator who has experienced a lot, but just when you were saying it and putting myself in, I think, into someone else's shoes of recognizing, oh yeah, and it's kind of like peeling back a few layers, sort of opening the curtains a little bit to have a feel or a look behind you in that moment
Yeah.
when you were sharing that.
You know as well as everybody else who does this, there's so much theory and there's so much written about it, and so many really great books. So, and I could get lost in all the theory. So, how do I explain this? And so, I just want to try to do it on a very human level.
Mm,
Then I get into, but then there's the method. If you're working in a group, I'll explain a little bit about that and stuff like that. So,
yeah. When you first met with Constellations, what was your experience of it personally? If you,
well, it's interesting. So I'm going to go back to the theater part of it. So when I first met Constellations, I said, God, how do I know this? And well, especially when we, sitting in a big group, and Ed Lynch, my mentor, now friend and colleague, he was facilitating. And I said, I know this. Why does this feel so familiar? Now in Gestalt, we do this thing called the empty chair, which we
Mhm.
place your father in the empty chair, then you'd go sit in your father's place. So there was a little bit of that. But this went back to my theater days when I used to do improvisation, and you'd set a scene up, right? You'd set a scene up. Okay, there's two of you, or you're dealing with this, and you just go. But improvisation really is, I mean, if we look at it, really is going into the field. But you're learning how to be spontaneous. You're learning how to deal with whatever coming up. So it had that feel for me. So it felt very familiar. And then I don't know at what point, 2 or 3 years in, after we were in the training, I felt like, wow, this work cuts through a lot of stuff and gets right to the heart of the matter. And I had doubts about that. It was funny. I said, "Ah, man, I was trying to look for all the, nope, no, this can't be this quick. It can't be this quick."
Can't be
And
this easy.
yeah, it can't be this easy. This is something else. And then I realized, wow, it cuts out so much stuff.
Cuts out I think it cuts out that humanness, all of that mind having to analyze,
Well,
chatter.
stuff. Well, what I would call now, it cuts right through your story, and dare I say bullshit that we've created about our past, our parents, maybe our own personal trauma. And it's not to minimize any things that have happened to us that were painful, but it cuts out all the noise about, oh, it shouldn't have happened. I wish it didn't happen. And how boom, 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 boom. It just cuts all that out.
Yeah.
And you're looking directly at your mom, carrying that burden for her. Who would I be if I let that down? That's part of my being. Well, maybe you try putting it down. And so when I was witnessing those moments, I'm like, of course, as going through the work, you do your own work. So that was just amazing for me.
Mm. Have you seen the impact on what you've received through Constellations personally and the impact within your family, your children, your partner, siblings?
Yeah, I remember when I was training. See, my wife Maggie knows Ed Lynch, and he was picking me up because Ed lives in my hometown, so he was picking me up to go to one of the trainings that he was doing. And and he said, "I'm sorry, I take your husband away on the weekends." She goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. He's a different person. Keep taking him away." I never asked her what she saw different. So, but evidently something was happening. I don't know. I don't know how it's affected. My parents were still alive when I started training. So it's hard to say. I think what it's allowed me to do is to be, this is what it's allowed me to do. When they were still alive and we would all have family gatherings, I could be in the gathering in the present without getting pulled into all the drama. Now, I don't know how that affected them. Yeah, I'm trying to remember something, but I don't. But my father would say, "Goes, what's wrong with you?" He would say, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me," because I wasn't doing the old show and
Mm.
tell.
He was expecting you to turn up in the same way.
Yeah, show up in the same way, and
Mm.
I would show up, and I'd be happy to show up, but I wasn't showing up in the same way. So.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, it's allowed. I got closer to my mother as I started to become a dad, and then it actually brought me closer to my dad, and we sort of, without making up, not that we needed to in a deep way, but I actually got to know him much better, and I could call him on some of his shit now and then. He'd always have a smile on his face when I did it, so without any kind of angst or thing, it just I could be in this space with you. Yes, you're my father, but I could be in this space with you just to being another man in this space with you.
Mm. That's great.
Yeah.
My dad was really good at triggering major life events, major life changing events. And one of them was what allowed me to sit in the hot seat with Mark Johnson. Did you know Mark?
Mark, I knew, yeah,
From
he came
Seattle.
east. Ed, he was in Seattle. He came east. Ed Lynch brought him east. And I was in that workshop, I think.
Mm.
I remember him, but I didn't do any work, but I was in the circle I probably represented too. But yeah.
Yeah. So I sat in the hot seat with Mark, facilitated me, and you're talking about you knowing the work. That's how well, after my constellation, it was kind of like, I don't know, there was another part of myself just saying to me, this is what you're here for. You know the
Yeah.
work. You're here to do this. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh. Still in my little bit of a taking all this in moment, but it's certainly been a change for me. Mm. But yeah, my
Yeah.
dad was a real catalyst for many, many major life-changing events, and I'm very grateful. They were a little bit slap in the face at the time, but very grateful for it.
Well, I would describe my father. We're not going into it. He was an imp. He was a troublemaker. He used to bark a lot. He had not much of a bite at all, but he'd bark a lot and start trouble and stir stuff up. And then he would walk away, like, and the family would be all like, "Oh," and, he would say comments. That's who he was. But he was more than that too. And it took me, and I think this work helped me see more of who he was as a man and a person. And obviously, he lost his dad when he was 12. So
Mm.
I actually remember early on in Constellations, I did a piece of work around that. But I think that didn't affect me as I thought it would have, that event, because I never knew his father. I'm 12 or 13, he died. And he loved his father. He adored his father. And he was only one of two boys. His older brother was already out of the house, and he had like six sisters or five sisters. So, but his father was, so when in those moments I got close to him because I would ask him to tell me about his dad, and you could see him. He could only go so far because he wasn't going to cry, but you could see it. You could see it, and those moments were very special. He got very quiet and very peaceful, and he would talk about it in his father.
I wish I'd had the opportunity to do a little bit more with my dad, but he was a catalyst for this, not to be part of
Yeah, well. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when we can take a step back and realize these men or these women are of a generation.
Mm.
And I always believe that even though they may not like the direction we go in, I mean, I didn't go in any direction my father wanted me to go in. He wanted me to go into business because that's what he knew, and he later in life he became extremely successul. But my brother went to military academy at West Point, my older brother, and my other younger second one. There's three boys, brother, me. The oldest one went into military academy, so he was like straight and narrow, and second brother went into business. I wanted to be an actor. I didn't want anything to do with business. So I drove my dad crazy. I think that was probably my job, but secretly, I believe he was sort of cheering me on. It's because it's something he couldn't have done,
Mm.
And I really believe that someone in the system is rooting for you. It's not on the surface, but it's underneath. And then I found out when his sister was still alive that his father, my grandfather, ran away from home from his parents, my great grand, in New York City, went down to New York City at 16 or 17 to become an actor. And they went and got him. They went and brought him home. You can't do that. You have to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I see those DNA programs sometimes, and people are going, like, who am I? Sort of. Sometimes there's actors and stuff, and they do a little thing through their DNA, and often you'll see that someone comes along, and it's like, oh my gosh, my great 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 grandmother was a performer, or
Yeah.
was a writer or a poet or something like that. And there's a very similar thread to what we are,
Sure.
what they are experiencing.
Going back to what I said, I think, kids drive their parents crazy, children do, or you're not following the family rule or the cultural line, or you're falling in love with someone outside of the norm or the religion. I think there's someone rooting those people on, but it's not conscious. You're not going to get permission, but underneath, because they couldn't do it. They couldn't break those rules. They weren't allowed to.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that can be a little crazy making, but I really believe that's in the system somewhere.
Yeah.
So.
I was just thinking about a piece of work that I did with you. Gosh, I don't know how many years ago now. I'd been going to go on someone else's workshop. Just going to share a little bit of personal stuff here for the listeners. I was going to go on someone else's workshop, and I think it was that they had forgotten to send me the link, and the workshop had started, and I was really looking forward to it. Like, it was one of those things I'd put in my calendar. I kept checking, making sure that it was all happening, and they'd forgotten to send me the link. And so I'm messaging them. No, I could see they were online, and they weren't getting my message. And I was just getting more and more triggered and activated, and this part of me was feeling lost and unseen, forgotten about. And I think I reached out to you, and you were able to do a piece of work with me straight away. And we did a piece of work around the lost and the forgotten part. And it was absolutely beautiful. And I had to bring in a part of me that was someone for, a support, and a thing for support, and a place for support.
Yeah, like a resource, sure.
And it just anchored and solidified a part of me that I didn't know was so wounded and lost.
Yeah, I remember.
There were many, many parts of me that were lost, but this one was this huge life-changing moment. And we did it online, and you just kept slowing me down, and we did it, and it was so, so beautiful. And it's a tool that I use. I use that with my clients as well now, because I know how potent it is. I also bring my drum in and do a bit of drumming with it.
Yeah, sure. I think I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so really grateful for that, Bill, and knowing that, whatever was that lined up to have that experience, I might not have ever looked at that in that time because I wasn't so triggered. So grateful for all of those experiences, right? The things that bring us to doing what we're going to do.
Yeah.
When you look at the silver lining of it. Yeah.
Well, and I really appreciate that you had mentioned that again in Sydney at the recent intensive, because I did it with that beautiful man, Richard. There's so much stuff there. And he was so vulnerable, and and that actually process, I learned it from a psychotherapist here in Connecticut, and I think she did it all in the mind's eye. Imagine you reaching out and resourcing yourself and taking these steps. I said, well, how do I translate that into an actual physical action? And as I recall, I think she learned that from a gentleman who was actually a shaman, because my shaman friends will say that looks like a soul retrieval. You're bringing back parts of your soul. And I said, well, I'm not trained in that way, but thank you for that. So yeah, and I'm grateful that you're doing it with your clients, because it's such a really phew, it's a big piece of work. And I know people, and you maybe you've experienced this, that they get towards that place, and if you're doing it in a group, it's so hard to make those final steps. Actually had to stop one woman because she got on her hands and knees and crawling. So now I get very firm. I said, no, you need to stand up. Because
Yeah.
what happened, as soon as she got on her hands and knees and started crawling towards that wounded part, the part turned away. I said, you need to get in touch with your adult self. That's what
Yeah.
this wounded part of you is really wanting. I did it with a woman in Montreal many years ago. It almost took an hour and a half. It was
Wow.
she. I said, we can stop. I have to do this. I have to do it. I said, okay, we'll take your time.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. I've seen some, well, one, and that comes to mind in particular, a woman had lost her child, had choked to death in his high chair.
oof,
And when she'd be talking to the police, they asked her questions and her voice just stuck. And so as life had gone on, because she'd walked out of the room, and when she came back, the baby had passed. And as the years had gone by, she would start to talk and then she'd stop, and then she'd just go on to a completely different subject. She couldn't continue fully into the sentences, into the conversation. And we did this piece of work with her. It was so beautiful, guys. I'm just feeling emotional thinking about it.
I can,
It was so beautiful. And the part of her that was frozen in that time, retrieving that part of her. And now she is articulate, and she is I see her and she's just so different, so much more. Yeah.
yeah, she's
Because all
more available.
parts. Yeah. Yeah. And she can, the conversations flow, and yeah. Yeah. Because she was really, really frozen. It was just so beautiful. So
Oh,
thank you for
it makes
that
total
tool. It's
sense.
been amazing.
Yeah, I mean that frozen place is actually a huge protection because
Yeah.
it probably contains so much guilt, shame, all that stuff. And, just at the depth of losing a child, it's amazing. So beautiful. I'm glad you were able to
Mm.
do
Mm. Have you got any examples that you feel comfortable with sharing that for the listeners? Because this is going out to a really broad audience of people. Some are facilitators, obviously, and others who are curious about constellations, and some who have no idea.
that. And what do you mean when an example?
Any pieces of work that really stick in your mind that there's the ones that you talk about regularly that you give examples of?
Well, a similar process is the interrupted movement, which I call completing the interrupted movement. It's usually when there's been an abandonment, or usually with the mother, usually with
Mm.
the mother. And I'll actually talk about one I just did recently. So, sometimes it happens with the father. So, what does that mean? So, we have a parent and they leave, when we're young, and maybe we get caught up in the other parent's anger and stuff, and so we're angry. But what's really underneath it is we're grieving because the person's gone or they died, God forbid. So I did this piece of work with this woman. She's Italian. She moved here. I forget how old she was. She moved here, but she lost her father when she was 3. And I don't know, he died in a work accident or something. And I said, so I offered her this structure. So basically what it is for your viewers is you set up the person who's missing or who left at the other side of the room, and you invite the person to complete the movement. Because the movement is this: you're reaching out and something's been cut off. They've disappeared, or they had to go to the hospital for 6 months or something.
Mm.
We set a man up for her dad, and the idea was she would take a walk and now to him, but not run to him. And I'll explain what that is. And this moved me because she started speaking in Italian as she was getting closer to him. I said, "Oof, this is her native language." Yeah, it was beautiful. And there's no resourcing in this one, and like with the exercise I did with you. And people say, "Why don't you resource the client?" And I said, "Well." I think healing happens when you can move through the fear of the abandonment reoccurring. Because deep inside of us, we think it's going to happen again.
Mm.
And usually this structure, if it's happened, or this trauma that's happened, we try to repair it. And where do we try to repair it? We try to repair it in our intimate relationships. We either find people who are unavailable, or we think they're going to leave us, so we'll leave them first. It's all unconscious
Yeah.
because we're hoping to repair it, but our partner can't repair it for us. So in this particular thing, she was moving very slow, and she kept saying, "I can't, I don't know." And I said, "Take your time." And then she moved very slowly, and she got within 4 or 5 feet or 6 feet of her dad, and she started speaking in Italian. And the man, the representative, didn't know Italian, but it doesn't make any difference. It's all in, you can feel it. You
Yep.
can feel it. And I said to her, I said, "I'm going to invite you to say these words. Just say, 'Dear Papa, please hold me again.'" That was it. And she said it in Italian. And I'm getting emotional talking about it. And he just put out his hands, and she jumped into his arms. That was it. So what happens internally is that that's completed now for her. There's a completion. I feel complete. People say, "But he's been dead for 30 years." They said, "Doesn't make any difference."
Right.
There's that longing to complete that movement because it was uninterrupted.
Yeah.
It
And it lives
stopped.
inside you, right? The trauma of it had lived inside, and now the
Mhm.
healing of it can continue to live inside and flow and be in its rightful place.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's really important, if your mother tongue is a different other than English, you should
Yes.
use it, because it just opens up a space for you, and it opens up a space for your own healing, because now you're really connected to your parent, mother or father,
Mhm.
because that was the first language you heard.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I remember that. So
Yeah. You did a beautiful one in Sydney around love, and walked between love and an ancestor. Am I remembering this correctly?
oh, workshop, how do you want to be loved?
Yes.
That whole structure comes out of somatic experiencing, so you can regulate your body to move it slowly. Yeah, I think it was. I forget the actual what the representatives were. Let's just say you say some more about that. Your
Well, I think it
experience.
was love, and then it might have been a resource. The other one might have been a resource, and for me, it showed up as an ancestor. So that might be
Hmm.
why I'm thinking about that. But it was walking between, but not in a straight line, in a like a rainbow sort of arc.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right,
Yeah.
right.
And that was really powerful, that process of coming out and then coming back in.
Yeah. Well, and it's the love you deserve. It's, which is a concept. I don't deserve because of this or whatever. So you put it up that, and then a resource, and whether it's Grammy or grandma or somebody older than that, could be anything. Could be the woods, the
Mm,
forest, just to allow you to move towards it, because we all, I think, in that kind of work, especially with love or universal love or bigger love, there's always a part of us that believes we don't deserve it.
yeah, yeah. It was interesting for me in that moment that my dad's mum had shown up in that moment, and I was able to. I mean, I know her pain, and I've acknowledged it before, but it was another layer of it. Her older brother had died as a baby. She had been a twin her twin had passed. Her mother died when she was 11, and she was left. She was then the eldest child, living
Yeah.
child, left to care for five others.
Mm.
Mm. And just in that, how do I want to be loved? How does love show up? Whatever it was, I just felt another deeper layer of that, because also felt that because I experienced a lot of trauma in my own life, and she had a nickname. They called her the whipping mama where we lived,
Mm.
because she was angry, and you can understand now.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand now. She didn't know how to be a mother, and she had to be a mother at 11. And then when she went on to have her own children, the neighbors named her the whipping mama. She used to whip her kids around the area. And I spent a lot of time in my early years with them because of some health issues that I had. And my parents were doing their best to survive in the way they were doing. So I
Mm.
ended up spending a lot of time with her. So that experience for me gave me another layer of appreciation and love for her as well as myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as you know, for me, I'm just drawn to doing these. Well, they're not. I wouldn't say small. I got into trouble with this beautiful woman in England because they said, "Oh, we're going to do this small exercise," and she yelled at me. She said, "Don't ever call those small exercises again. They just crack my heart open." I said, "Okay, we're going to do this exercise, and it's very profound." But just in my work, I'm just drawn to what is essential, what is you need right now, and it's just where I am right now in my life in terms of if I was working with you now, even if we were in a group, I would go right to the heart of the matter. What is it? What is it right now that, and it could just mean we set up your dad or we set up this and and it doesn't preclude or exclude, oh, we might have to go look at his father and his parent. It doesn't preclude any of that. It's just, so people say, how do you work? And I go, well, how do I work? Just a drop here, a smidgen there, and you know, a little bit of this, and that's.
Like you described your cooking earlier, right? That's exactly how you described.
Well, actually, when I did my retreat, I did this retreat 2.5 hours from here in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts. It's beautiful where the leaves are changing. And this woman, a lot of people did testimonials video, and I said to my wife, I said, listen to this woman's description of how I work. And I said, I think she described it. So I posted it on Facebook and stuff. Because we can't see how we work, right? People can give us feedback. And yeah, so it's just what I'm drawn to is just, you're a human being living and breathing right in the moment. What is it you need to be free right now? And what are you still holding on to or creating or imagining that doesn't really need to be there anymore?
Yeah.
And I think this method is expansive in that because it brings us to this. Well, I think I use it in Sydney. I have this metaphor, it brings us to the edge of a river because we're unentangled. We've let go of some of the stuff we've been carrying for our parents, but there's a bridge and the invitation is to cross the bridge. Well, I don't know what's on the other side. No one knows, but are you willing to go over and see? You can turn and bow before you go over the bridge. And so I use this metaphor, and someone said, well, can I walk across the water? I said, no one gets to walk across the water. You can walk through the river.
Yeah.
I said, but if you're telling me you want to walk across the water, you might have to go back into your family system, do a little more work first. He goes, I meant walking through the river. I said, yeah, you can walk through the river. That's fine.
Yeah. Against the current, with the current.
Yeah, with the current. I mean, that's fine. I just like the idea. I like the image of a bridge, just walk. There's the invitation.
Absolutely.
Invitation to cross over.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find that helps with the looping? Sometimes people loop a little bit.
I think, well, it takes a lot of courage. People get on, the metaphor. Since I've used that metaphor with a lot of my groups and stuff, people say, I think I'm stuck on the ridge. I said, well, what makes you stuck? And usually it's the fear of not knowing what's on the other side. I said, okay, that's all right. Let's work on that. No one knows what it is. Yeah, I think what it does with the looping, when you mean looping, going back into the problem, going back into the.
Yeah. I've seen the solution. I've felt that, but it's safer to be back here. There's something that.
Yeah, and that's fine. That'll happen. And sometimes and I don't think, for me personally, I don't think any of that all there just completely disappears or dissolves. I think there's always threads of it. It's just the thread doesn't. You want to get to the place where the loop doesn't pull you back in. You can feel it, like, oh, it's still there. Oof, okay. And then
More of a tug than a bungee pull.
It's a tug. Yeah, it's a tug. And I think people get confused with tug. Well, when I think of my mom, I still feel sad. I said, okay, does the sadness grip you or is it just flowing through you? It's just flowing through me. I said, then that's fine.
Recognizing that it's there, but it's not pulling you in anymore, right?
Well, not pulling in, gripping you, holding you, making you think that you have to do something about it. It's like if you're driving in the car, you hear a song you heard when you were 16 and you remember your first boyfriend and you get all cheery. I said, okay, then you get back to your partner and your dog wants you or your husband wants you. Okay. So,
yeah, exactly.
Those kind of things.
I'm getting the nudge here to ask you about your training and the work that you're offering. So if someone's listening and who might be interested in training with you or coming to anything that you've got offering? You've got a bit of going
Yeah.
on? Yep.
I just completed a training this year, online, no, live in-person training. I've been doing training since 2012 with my colleague, friend, and partner, Ed Lynch. And then that all got interrupted with the pandemic. And then I started my own training this year. And I'm so busy next year. I will probably start a training next year, live training, and in November. And usually what I do is six 4-day modules every other month. So we meet every other month for a Thursday through a Sunday and dive right in. And then because of the internet now, I offer in between, there'll be a 1 3-hour session because a lot of people want to work online. And so I include that in the training, but that's in between each module. We'll pick a date and meet for 3 hours. I'll do some work online, explain different, ways to work online in group and individual. So probably 2025, 2026 will be the next training.
Okay, and you've got
And
some stuff coming up overseas, doing a bit of travel.
Yeah, before I do that,
Available.
I haven't posted. I'm thinking of a couple of just online workshops that I'll be offering probably in the wintertime, like in January or February. I'll keep you posted on those. I haven't thought. Usually those are the 3-hour things I do, like how do you want to be loved or making peace with your parents. I say that, people go, oh yeah, no, we're not going to go to that one.
Funny how resistant some people can be, right?
Oh, okay, well, it's okay. I said it's all right. Just come, pay your money and come, and you'll be fine.
Just
Yeah,
come and
next
watch.
year. What? Just watch.
Just come and watch. Just come and
Yeah.
watch.
No, next year, I'm actually be working a lot in the United States. I'm going to be in Idaho in March, early March, and then Minnesota with Catherine Curran, who has a big institute in Minnesota, Minneapolis. And then we see that's March, and then I go work with Leslie Nips in her Western intensive with Francesca Mason Boring, Leslie's Snake novel. That will be in the middle of May. And then from there, I literally go to France and I work 3 days in Poitiers, France, south of Paris.
Wow.
And then I come home and then back to LA for a workshop, and then Romania again in July, and Romania again in the beginning of September, and then Dublin. And so that's pretty much.
That's exciting. That's exciting. And in Romania, you're working with Dragos?
I'm working with Dragos, and yeah, I'll be doing a 3-day workshop, just an open workshop in July, 11, 12, 13. And then I work with, he started another new training group in a different city. I used to be working in Bucharest. This is Yash, Liasi or Lasi. I'm not pronouncing it correctly. That's in the northern part of the country. So I work with his training group. I'm a guest facilitator. So we'll work on specific issues and exercises and things like that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I have a regular thing in Romania. So it's great. I really enjoy it. So
Yeah, it's quite big there, isn't it?
yeah, and Dragos he has like 3 training groups going on simultaneously. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. But I know.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for, being part of the whole process there. So yeah.
Groundbreaking stuff. That's really good.
Oh, and I'll say this has nothing to do with constellations, or maybe it does. So when then I have my retreat next year in 2 hours from here, like in the first week in October, and then I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago.
Fantastic.
As long as my body's in shape, I'm practicing now. Going to start working out more in the winter, but I'm going to take the whole 30 days. Already got permission from my wife.
She's not going to join you?
No, she'll come over after. I'll fly her over. She'll come over and we'll spend some time in Barcelona or someplace like that. Yeah. And yeah, that's the goal. It's just to walk the Camino Frances from the Pyrenees all the way over to the coast.
Is there some ancestral thread there, or is this a curiosity?
I don't know that. I'll have to check out. My brother's done sections of it, but I don't know if there's an ancestral thread. I don't know, but I could find out.
That's
there might be an ancestral thread to wander, but not specifically on the Camino.
Yeah, I say that I have gypsy. I have gypsy line, and I think that I'm told the word gypsy is not so used these days, but
Yeah.
that's what my family refer to themselves as through my
Yeah.
Irish gypsy line. So, and I love to get out and do stuff and not be put in the same place, not be in the same place for too long.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I love coming home. So,
Well, that's like me. I like going out and then coming back.
mm,
And I can go out for a long time and come back. But something, if it's too long, look at, I'm not complaining at all, but I do like that. But it'll be interesting because when I do the Camino, it'll be the longest time I'm away from home in one clip.
mm,
But it'll be nice just to, meet people, walk every day. I have no other goal but to walk a certain amount of kilometers every day, and that's it.
great. Yeah.
And tend to the blisters on my feet.
Yeah.
That's it. Keep my journal, and we'll go from there. So,
Nice. Yeah.
uh,
Like
that's
a
all.
walking meditation for your soul.
Like a walking meditation, and then when I come back that November, that's when my training would begin. So hopefully,
Be interesting to see for yourself, I guess, because I know a few people who have done the Camino, different parts of the Camino and stuff, and how they feel in themselves quite different when they return. Just
yeah.
a deeper knowing in themselves and broadness and yeah.
Mhm. I mentioned to a friend, the whole story of the Camino. They say if you walk the Camino in this lifetime, all your sins are forgiven. And my friend said, there aren't enough Caminos for me. I said, oh, we'll leave it there.
Maybe just walk it a few times.
Yeah. That's not why I would be walking it. So
Beautiful. Well, I think that, yeah, we could talk for ages. Like there's so much together, right? So much to share. And I really appreciate you coming on here today, Bill, and sharing your time and knowledge. Yeah. You're gentle. There's such a gentleness about you and the way you translate what's there for people.
well, I
Yeah.
appreciate
So
that.
thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Thank you.
If people would like to get in touch with you, so I always invite people to share it on here, but we'll also share it in the threads that is as it's posted. But if they'd like to find you, Facebook,
Yeah. Yeah, they
Instagram,
can find me on Facebook. Also, my website is very easy. They can leave a message there. It's billmannle.com. That's easy. And there's a contact, sort of window you can put your information in. And also just billmannle at Gmail. That's my email.
wonderful. And we'll put those details in the thread as well.
I appreciate that.
And is there anything you'd like to share before we leave? We'll leave it here.
Well, no, I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and to actually here we are spending more time together. Actually, to spend some time with you and just to you know talk and be together means a lot.
Yeah, I missed a big opportunity in Sydney to spend some time with you, and I was like, just wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be here, right?
Yeah. It's meant to be here, and there'll be other opportunities. So
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll make
Mm.
that happen. Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks to the listeners and the viewers, and hope you've received some beautiful nuggets of wisdom and insight from this conversation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E. .cartwright. Or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.